Thanks everybody for coming to this Aquaculture Information Exchange Connect and Learn presentation. Today we have Jimmy Avery, who's the SRAC director, presenting on catfish industry challenges. Um, and I was just talking before the call that catfish is a species that I think is a little underrepresented on our website. And for those of you, if there's anyone on here who's not registered on the Aquaculture Information Exchange, we're a social networking platform for aquaculture professionals and enthusiasts. But yeah, catfish is a little underrepresented on our platform, so I love that we're having a presentation. Um, and just another quick announcement is that we're actually celebrating our 1 year anniversary of the website this month. And as part of commemorating that milestone, we're hosting an AIE Awards contest, and the nomination period just closed. So we're sort of reviewing the nominations right now, but we'll be kicking off with voting tomorrow. So keep an eye out for an email about that. The winners of the awards will get up to $500 in travel reimbursements for travel to a aquaculture conference next year, as well as some fun AIE swag and an official winner certificate. Um, and we're going to host a award ceremony next week, next Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern. And we are going to announce the winners there live after the voting has been closed. So that should be fun. So please, vote for people who you think will deserve the award. I'll drop the registration link for the award ceremony in the chat. But other than that, Jimmy, take it away.
Okay, hope everybody can see that.
Looks good.
Great. Thank you for the opportunity to come talk to you today. And I realize most of my association with the Aquaculture Information Exchange Network has been through SRAC, but today I'd like to talk kind of through my primary job here at Stoneville is as Extension Aquaculture Professor. I am with the Thad Cochran National Warm Water Aquaculture Center. If you're not familiar with that, we are in Stoneville, Mississippi. We are at an off-site location for Mississippi State University, and we house 3 units in Mississippi State, the Extension Service, the Agricultural and Forestry Experiment Station, and the College of Veterinary Medicine Researchers and Diagnostic Facility. And we're also host for 2 locations of USDA. We got the ARS Warm Water Aquaculture Research Unit, formerly known as the Genetics Research Unit, and also the NEFA Southern Regional Aquaculture Center. The Southern Regional Aquaculture Center has been here since 1986, and I've been the director of that since 2012, when my former colleague Craig Tucker stepped down from that role. So one of the things I'd like to talk to you about, not only about the catfish industry, but a little bit about what we do here in Stoneville. We are fortunate in the fact that we have great support both from Mississippi State and from USDA, and has led to some really good facilities here. You know, we've got our office and analytical labs, aquarium building, nutrition labs. The Waru has a hatchery, wet labs, and their own set of ponds out at their facility as well. And we've got the typical lab space that you would see, wet labs, analytical labs, and we also have a pathogen-free holding building that we can hold fish for some period of time before they're stocked out in our trials, whether those trials be indoors in aquarium or outdoors in our ponds. We can hold them there and control really what their exposed to as well. But I think there are three things that really lend this institution to being successful. One of those is being our staff. And we've had a lot of people come through this facility over the years. And think about, we've really kind of started back in the early 80s. A lot of people have come and gone. A lot of people have come and retired. And a lot of people have come and stayed as well. We currently have 16 scientists, and we've got 4 vacancies out there. So if you're interested in maybe coming to work with us, there are a couple of applications floating around out there now that you might be able to find. The second one is our pond facilities. We've got almost 300 acres, and we've got ponds ranging from really the commercial size, traditional ponds of maybe 11 acres. These are the ones that you see kind of in the top left, and all the way down to 10th acre ponds, where we can get that kind of repetition that we need to kind of grind this stuff out as well. So lots of ponds. Unfortunately, now those ponds are very expensive to operate. You got to think about, we've got 257 ponds out there. They all got their own aerators. They all got to be fed. They've all got to be managed as well. So it's very expensive now to kind of do this research, especially when you're looking at some of the intensity levels that we're doing in some of these split ponds and intensively aerated small ponds. You know, when we're feeding, we may be feeding a ton per day in some of these ponds out there. But the third thing I think that really makes us have the opportunity to do the work we do is simply the fact that we're located probably within 50 miles of a large percentage of the catfish industry. So we can do those kind of cooperative research agreements and go out there and see and conduct this work on ponds that are of a commercial size and commercial scale. Of course, the other side of that is the fact that probably every farmer within that 50-mile range knows where we are. And they come here and they walk in the front door and they go directly to that research person that's doing that work and is asking them. So from the extension side of that, I am in no way kind of a gate holder. Okay. They know who's doing that work. They'll come in there and see them. And it's my kind of role to kind of help get that information kind of back out there. So Stoneville, it's located in the Delta. You see this kind of that East Mississippi and Alabama is kind of a different setup, of course. Those are mostly hill ponds. Here in the Delta, they're all kind of flat, typical rectangular that you would see. So from extension side, and I've been doing extension work now for roughly 40 years and probably about 5 or 6 different species. But most of my work has been done with catfish. First here at Stoneville back in the early 80s, from the research side, then Louisiana as an area parish agent, and then working statewide. I also did a little work in crawfish and alligators and a few other things out there as well. So we do have a mature industry here in Mississippi and in Alabama, Arkansas, Texas. So the catfish industry is now probably maybe somewhere in the neighborhood of probably 60 years old. Okay. And we do the typical things that you would see, you know, farm visits, workshops, seminar. We do have a standard what we call our fall seminar that's held, and I am fortunate the fact that I get very good cooperation from our researchers, both here at our site, but also we've had a lot of participation by our scientists at at Starkville as well, either from the USDA or MSU come and present at these locations. One of the things that when you're dealing with a mature industry, seems like you're dealing more and more with kind of the regulatory side of this. And currently, kind of looking at doing a lot of work, answered questions even this morning on FSA ELAP question. Now that food fish is covered in that program, we're getting a lot of questions about how to better respond to claims, how to work with the state representative in those agencies to really kind of get that best information out there. We've done a lot of work on diuron and formalin in the last couple of years. Don't know where we're going to wind up on those, but two very important chemicals we'd like to be able to continue both from the application side, but also from the research side. Our guys down the hall, I did a little stint in histology years ago, and I know how important that formalin is going to be to that histology process. And of course, we do a lot of support with CFA, working with them either through the leadership side of that or with answering questions that they have. We do a lot of water quality, pond ecology work, both from the Mississippi State and the USDA side. You got Chuck Miskey and Brad Richardson, Brian Ott, always doing a lot of work either on fry pond preparation or looking at different management strategies and how that impacts ammonia levels and oxygenation. One of the big focuses now is really on this kind of snail control and darrow worms, the cause for PGD, one of the hosts for PGD out there. So what we can do to kind of control these agents in our pond. Production system development, Craig Tucker led this charge for many, many years. Now you're looking at either Tim Pfeiffer or Brian Ott and some of our water quality people in Mississippi State are kind of looking at really how do we improve that efficiency and how do we kind of manage those systems such that we're not spending as much on energy going forward. Economics, we've been fortunate years, first with Terry Hansen here and now with Ganesh Kumar, and really kind of looking at that economics and the cost efficiency with all of these different scenarios that we've got out here. So now every kind of project that we do kind of has an economic component, and it's nice to have somebody down the hall that you can go to and talk to about these issues. And also looking at, and SRAC has funded some work in kind of the marketing part of this. In other words, who's buying our product and what's our competitors in the marketplace as well. Nutrition feeding, we've had a nutrition program here since probably 1985, 1986. Ed Robinson led that for a long time, followed by Ming Lee, and now Fernando Yamamoto, and really kind of looking at some different issues there, looking at health and microbiota, feed additives, and also looking at this ferrous sulfate supplementation. So lots of work going on, and there again, we've got the pond space and the aquarium space to kind of see that through. Fish health management has always been a big component of the work here, and you look at kind of how that's changed over the years. Vaccine development has really taken a major part in the last 10 years, not only, of course, the ESC vaccines, but, now we're looking at different virus vaccines as well. Catfish anemia is always a big issue for us. It was back in the 80s when I was here the first time, looking at this kind of problem. Pathogen detection, there again, microbiome is becoming more and more prominent in our research. Clinical disease research has been going on a long time here as well, looking at now rapid diagnostic tests and some of these emerging pathogens. PGD is still a big concern to our farmers, and so it continues to be looked at, and we'll see outbreaks of that on a yearly basis. One of the services we offer here is diagnostics, and we'll average Over the last 10 years, we'll average about 750 cases come in every year. That number has dropped a little bit in the last couple of years simply because probably our acreage has dropped. But it's a very important service to our farmers, especially now that you're looking at all of our medication, all our medicated feeds have to be done through a prescription. Then they've got to come in and get that work done before they can get access to those medications. Genetics, breeding, and hybridization, really since USDA came in and took this over back in the mid 80s, we've looked at selective breeding, hybridization techniques, the pond ecology. And I think that's really kind of, as that part of that mission has grown, really kind of spurred on this kind of change in the name. Not only it's not just genetics anymore. Yes, it's a big part of it, but we're looking at pond ecology, water quality, and other things as well. So now let's talk a little bit about, or a lot about, the catfish industry. This is fairly new information, just came out in the most recent census of aquaculture. Catfish still is the #1 species being reported out there. You're looking in 2022, about $430 million in farm gate sales. You can kind of contrast that with trout. I did notice, compared to the 2017, a big jump in mollusks. That number was probably somewhere around 350 million in 2017. So big jump in that. But are one of the oldest groups of production out there, and still a fairly large part of the total that we see. And that's a big contributor from the economic side of that. You're looking at about $1.9 billion in economic output and about 9,000 jobs generated. You look at direct, economic output, about $1.1 billion. And so within those three states of Arkansas, Mississippi, and Alabama, is a huge economic driver. Of course, when we talk about acreage, we hit our peak back in about 2002, and really kind of 1988 was the first year that NASS started collecting that data. And I urge all of you that kind of track information about your own species out there, really try to find an independent, verifiable source. I always use USDA NASS numbers, and yes, this is voluntary information, and so I understand there's probably some margin of error there, but I can always go back and point to this set of numbers when I'm talking to other government agencies or whoever I'm talking to. This is the standard by which we discuss acreage and trends. So our latest numbers show about 53,000 across the U.S. And that is a 22-year drop of about 73%. Okay. So big decline since our peak back in 2002. Mississippi still makes up about 60% of that total. Alabama, Arkansas, and Texas are the next three. And I noticed that the USDA census data shows there's probably 600 farms across the U.S. So that's scattered in a lot of different states out there, but these are the predominant producers. And it's always one way to look at kind of graphs and numbers and to see kind of trends, and you can slant those really whatever point you're trying to make. But this is a very interesting feature I hope you have used in Google Earth. It's kind of their time track, a sliding scale here, and it's kind of, you can, and it's always up in that top left-hand corner when you're looking at the screen. And for whatever they've got aerial photographs, you can kind of slide it back and see. So I like this a lot. And I've used, this is a screenshot from Google Earth in 2005. And this is Highway 49 between essentially Indianola and Belzona. And I zoomed in here from Isola to Belzona because this was a very interesting stretch of road here. And the fact there's lots of catfish ponds on both sides of the road. So whenever somebody was coming to the Delta, I always sent them back to Jackson or back to Memphis, depending where they were leaving from, to go down this highway and kind of get this kind of sense of the scale. And this is the what it looked like in 2005. And if you slide that scale to 2024, this is what you're going to see. Really, where the only ponds left are really these ponds here. And I think there's probably some catfish hatchery pond water there. And this set here that I believe is probably water treatment facility for the town of Belzoni. So you can kind of see these scars here from where these catfish ponds have been transitioned back to row crop production. In 2003, we hit our peak on production of about 661 million pounds. And we kind of thought at that point we were on a trajectory to hit a billion-pound industry. Okay, a billion-pound industry. Well, we hit it. Unfortunately, only about 30% of that is U.S. farm-raised production. But another interesting aspect here, if you look from about 2011 to 2023, you see that we have been fairly flat or a slight increase in production. But we still, and if you remember that slide earlier, we're still going through single-digit acreage production every year. And we'll talk about kind of what that points to in a minute. So the reason for these declines, and Carol Engel and others have kind of looked at this and done some very good reporting on this in various journal articles out there. You're looking at market disruptions. You know, a lot of our catfish, or the majority of our catfish, is eaten in restaurants. So if people are a little hesitant of eating for whatever reason, that impacts us, whether that's through the 9/11, the recession that they didn't want to spend that money, or COVID-19. We all know what kind of impact people not dining out had on seafood all across the board. But one of the biggest reasons is, of course, is increased competition from cheap imports. Of course, feed costs have been rising, and compared to our input costs, we have seen some fairly low fish prices over that time frame. You know, one thing that is going to going in our advantage is that this U.S. per capita consumption of fish and shellfish is increasing. So even from 2012 to 2020, we have seen this kind of increase. And you think, okay, well, that's going to give us more room to sell. Well, unfortunately, that room has been taken up by imports. So if you look at those imports kind of hit their peak back in 2022, when we imported about 872 million pounds of product. Now, I urge you as well, as we look at this is from the Department of Commerce numbers, but those numbers are reporting finished product. So they're talking about fillets coming into this country. So you have to go back and kind of make that calculation into what that live weight equivalent would be. Because USDA, of course, is just reporting live weight, sold to processors. So that kind of gives you an even comparison now. We did see a drop in 2023, and I think a lot of that has been through some problems that you see in that foreign production and forward marketing, whether they have switched where they're going with that product or has simply produced less product. So that year, that change between 2022 and 2023, it's about a 35% reduction. Not curious to see how we're going to wind up in 2024, but we'll look at that at the end of the year. So what that means, at least as far as U.S. consumption of Siluriformes, um, back in 2006, probably about 73% of that was domestic production. That other 27% was either coming from Brazil or a little bit from Vietnam. But contrast that with 2023, when domestic only makes up about 36%. And that number has been as low in the last in 2022, as low as 24% of the U.S. consumption. Now we're holding our own in the grocery stores, and some of that is there's a lot of regional variability there as well. This is some work by Dr. Kumar on some work that SRAC has funded. You look at the South Central region, U.S. catfish has predominated those sales, and even you go through most of the central region, we see that difference. Okay. And you think about country of origin labeling, where a consumer has that knowledge there to make that choice. Compare that. This is back in 2014. I was kind of helping out some family members in a local restaurant, and so I was the one running to get supplies various times, and I kind of noticed this in the frozen food section. And so if you look at, let's say, U.S. channel catfish, a 15-pound box of 7 to 9 ounce fillets, that box was costing $74. And that worked out to be about $5 per pound. Well, contrast that with what that same person walking into that wholesale distributor, they can pick up a box of Chinese channels for $47 a box or $3 a pound. And compare that with swai fillets at that time going for about $27 a box or about $1.79 a pound. So I think that's why you see, especially in restaurants where consumers don't know all the time what they're getting, unless you're in the states of Mississippi, Alabama, and a couple of others, where you have this kind of restaurant labeling going on. So you can kind of see that pressure there. And there again, these are 2014 prices. If you looked at 2024 prices, I think you would kind of see this kind of same, all these prices would be higher, but you'd still see the same kind of range as well. Feed has been always is a high, it's probably 50% of our costs, and that price of that feed has risen steadily since probably 2000. And so it's put more and more pressure because we have not been able to get prices high enough to really kind of compensate for that. We have seen some decrease in feed prices probably over the last 8 months, but we're still at a fairly high rate. But if you look at kind of the work that's been going on, either here at Stoneville or at Auburn and other places that have looked at catfish feed ingredients, if you look at a 1990 diet, and typically back then we would have been making a 32% protein feed. With the ingredient costs based on 2022, that feed would have cost us probably $483 to make per ton. Okay. Well, contrast that with 2022. One of the predominant diets that we were feeding is a 28% protein diet. We have increased the cottonseed, and through research, we've seen that we can grow fish effectively without fish meal and with higher cottonseed meal and some of these lower price ingredients. So if we were making that feed in 2022, we could be making that for about $354 per ton, which is a savings in ingredient cost only of about $129 per ton. So that's some of that kind of impact that nutrition research has shown. We talked about price, that, yeah, we were kind of, you look at 2000, we were probably in that 73 cents with that kind of almost glut on that market of 660 million pounds of product. We dropped to 57 cents per pound. We kind of hit our peak in 2022 of about $1.33, but we are seeing some backing down on those prices in 24. So yes, it's better, but we've got some awfully high ingredient costs. We've got some very high input costs out there that a lot of farmers are struggling with making ends meet. And if you kind of look at this current price structure that we're seeing out here, kind of what the processors are really looking for is this 1 to 4 pound fish. This is from August numbers. This is the latest numbers I had. You're looking at $1.11, down from that $1.33 high that we saw last year. And really, the processors have started paying kind of on a size scale. So as we get above this premium cost, this premium size range, then our farmers start receiving less. So they're sorting these fish out at the processor, and they're getting a cost sheet back to the farmers that kind of show this breakdown on the deducts here. One thing I'd like to point out here, and we'll talk about it here in a minute, is like these extra large fish, anything above 8 pounds. We're either getting, in August, we were only getting 3 cents per pound for those fish. And you'd have to think about what that fish really cost us to produce. Okay. And I would probably say catfish are probably one of the few species that get really penalized if we get outside of a certain size range. Okay. But yes, tilapia is probably another one where the consumer is really honed in on a certain size, either whole fish or certain size fillet, for that center of the plate. Once you get outside of that, our farmers are really kind of paying the penalty for that. But, I pointed out earlier the fact that we have been going up on pounds of fish processed, even during this period of continued downsizing of the industry. Well, the only way you can do that is you're getting more efficient on fewer acreage. So if you looked at, in 2009, we were producing about 4,000 pounds to the acre gross. In 2023, that's 7,200 pounds to the acre. And there again, when I talked earlier about using NASS numbers, these are based on NASS numbers. These are based on NASS food fish acreage and pounds of food fish going to the processing. Okay. So there again, when we say, well, where'd that number come from? Well, these are based on U.S. government survey numbers. So that's about an 82% increase over that time period. And so if you look at some of those reasons for that increased efficiency, simply we've got improved production systems, split ponds, extensively aerated small ponds, and we have raised, even in our traditional ponds, we are using more aeration. We've got better supportive technologies. We've got a different fish, growing hybrid catfish. We've got automation out there, and we've seen a lot of improved fish health management strategies, one of those being vaccine. So if you look at that, these improved production systems really allows our fish to express their true genetic potential. Hybrids do better in these systems for various reasons. So they can take advantage of, the farmers can take advantage of these systems. They're a little bit easier to manage. And as we could say, as they're becoming more efficient, they are becoming more profitable. So if you look at a split pond system, this is what we're talking about. This is work, this is work Craig Tucker did based on some earlier work on those intensive systems designed by David Bruni. You're looking at in this system to say 85% of this system is used to treat waste, make oxygen during the day. All those fish are now confined in this 15% of the pond. Intensively aerated small ponds, we're taking, let's say, that typical either 15 to 10 acre pond, cutting that in half. And typically we would be doing that either as that pond needed to be renovated anyway. So now we're coming in there and spending the money on that dirt work, cutting it down in size, but increasing the aeration rate. And then, of course, we're also increasing the aeration rate in conventional or traditional ponds as well. So if you look across the board, we are using more aeration. Looking back in 1982, using about 1 horsepower per acre. Now we're up to about 4.2. And a lot of that is based on work, that Les Torrens was doing here, showing that, yes, if you keep these animals a little less stress, in other words, rather than managing for just emergency DO, if you're keeping it above 3, then you can get a lot more production. And so that was kind of the impetus there for farmers to really start dropping in that second aerator, dropping in that third aerator going forward. And so if you look at that harvest, traditional ponds certainly lower than intensively aerated or split ponds as well. If you look at kind of this adoption rate, here again, this is work by excuse me, Ganesh and Luke and others, looking at this kind of traditional systems down to about 69%, 31% is these total intensive systems, which are made up of intensive aeration or split pond. So we're seeing a fairly good adoption rate, starting really kind of back in 2013 and 2014, really timing with some of these other technologies coming on to support those. One of those supportive technologies is hybrid catfish, where we're taking the cross between the blue catfish male and the channel catfish female, and we get that resulting hybrid vigor. And if you look at what that vigor looks like, it's got faster growth. They're more tolerant of high stocking rates, and really they kind of bring that in from the blue catfish being more of a schooling fish out there, so they're not really hesitant about getting up there and fighting for feed. You've got better feed conversion, and really I think that better feed conversion is really tied to the next one there, and you got better survival. If you're losing fewer fish, then your feed conversion rates are going to go up. They are somewhat easier to harvest in the fact that as a schooling fish, they'll typically tend to get up in the water column, so we do a little better job about getting them out of the pond, except for the fact that they have a smaller head. That's a challenge in how we can use traditional seining techniques as well. And and that smaller head also leads to an improved meat yield. And so we are seeing this kind of adoption going from less than 2 million fry to kind of try out and put in some test situations up to over 300 million in 2020. And there again, if you look at that adoption rate, now probably about 53% of the fish we raise are hybrids. But that's not consistent across all states. We're seeing a higher adoption rate in Mississippi than we're seeing in Alabama and Arkansas. And I think at least in Alabama, a lot of that is hybrids just don't fit as well into these kind of multiple batch systems that is so often used in these hill or watershed ponds. When you look at another supportive technology, we're looking at ESE vaccines. Prior to this vaccine, all of it was primarily a killed vaccine. It was an immersion vaccine that we typically had to use on very, very young fish. Fish are probably typically only 20 days or less that we were immersing. This is an orally delivered live attenuated vaccine. It was licensed in 2015. And there again, it's applied directly to feed and fed to probably a fish that's a minimum of 60 days old And so their immune systems are a little better developed, and it has been very, very effective. Um, that impact when it became licensed in 2019, we saw about 83% of fingerling farms vaccinated, both channels and hybrids. If you look at adoption rate, um, we're probably up in this, like I said, 83% range. So very, very quick adoption. And it has had a benefit. You're looking at survival increase of about 20%, but it really has been able to let us push those fish harder. So um, economic benefit to our fingerling producers has been probably somewhere around $2,200 per acre. So it has allowed us to increase that efficiency on the production side of our fingerling. Another benefit, and this may be somewhat anecdotal, but this is based on submissions to our diagnostic lab, where we're typically looking at antibiotic resistance coming in. Antibiotic resistance, at least from Edwards side, has dropped from about 16% in 2019 to less than 2%. That's going to be an article in our upcoming NWAC newsletter. So be looking for that. That's based on some work done here in Stoneville, and you'll see the authors in that publication. So now let's talk a little bit about the other challenges that I see for this industry going forward. Large fish, bird predation, regulatory burden, and certification. I think this large fish issue that we're seeing right now is based on, we see it in channels and hybrids. It is more pronounced in hybrids. There are lots of different reasons why we're seeing that. But one of these has been through some harvest delays that we're seeing, just kind of an oversupply of fish. We're kind of backing fish up. Fish are having to be inventoried into ponds longer. And of course, we always have this kind of issue about carryover fish. And there's really two different problems here. We see a problem we see in East Mississippi and Alabama is where they're looking at where fish are being simply missed in these ponds, either due to some structural issues or they're not being able to harvest it as many times as they need to get these guys out. And so they develop some problems there. And we see this range in both channels and hybrids, but it is more pronounced on the hybrid side of that. There's some work based in processing plants by Luke and others at Auburn. And this is kind of what this is an extreme example. Okay. What we're talking about in premium is that fish on the right. Okay. Anywhere from a 1 to 4 pound fish. And this just shows some carryover fish that were found in ponds due to some electroshocking work that was kind of showed that these fish were occupying the same pond. So what they're seeing, and Luke and Anita can speak more to this, is that this problem they're seeing in Alabama is more problematic even than in Mississippi, because these fish, of course, become cannibalistic once you start getting this kind of size range. So it has further impact just besides what we're getting in price. And here's kind of what we're getting in price. If you look at, this is just for January through August of 24. This is kind of what we saw on this is the total impact here of loss just due to deducts. Okay. That does not have anything to do with lost opportunity costs, anything else out there. This is just what farmers received less than what they would have if they had all been in that premium side. So just for those first 8 months of 2024, farmers lost about $6.5 million in deducts due to these kind of big fish issues. Okay, well, what can we do about it? If we're looking at, can we do a better job of grading those fish? Okay, can we do a better job of harvesting those fish as well? And we've spent money in SRAC. We've spent a lot of money in research through the years looking at that. But one of the things that leads to is that even if we were doing a better job on grading these fish, then how are we going to manage those differences? If we get them ready to go and then we're delayed 2 months until we can get them into a processing plant, well, how do we manage that? Do we put them on some kind of restricted diet? Do we find alternative places to try to sell them? So even if we were able to do um, a better job, then I think it falls back that now we've got to look even at management, not just the technology side of that. And if you look on the producer side, okay, they're selling, their prime market is for somewhere between probably a 5 to 7 ounce fillet for that center of the plate, or something that's going to be fried, or something that's going to be, in some kind of pretty plate thing. You know, um, so some of the things they've looked at is this kind of thick cut, delicata, tri-skin, trying to have a center of the plate presentation very similar to halibut or some of these other fish, or stripping it. And we just don't have as many products developed out there of what we can do with essentially a 12 to 14 to 18 ounce fillet. What do we do with that other than stripping? And how do we sell that product? Bird predation. Good to see Fred and Brian on here. We've done a lot of work in this area. Still a problem. I can tell you this: every one of these pictures is taken on a catfish farm in the Mississippi Delta. Whether we're talking about pelicans, or we're talking about egrets, or we're talking about double-crested cormorants. Okay. One of the things adding to this is now double-crested cormorants like it so well. They're not migrating anymore. But hey, why go that far when we can just stay here and eat? Okay. This is a picture I took in a rookery several years ago, and I thought, oh, somebody has finally documented. No, that's been documented many years ago. Brian Dorr told me that I think his wife actually took better pictures than I did of that a long time ago. If you look at it from a regulatory standpoint, that's another, as I said earlier, from a mature industry, you're looking at lots of things going on. We dealt with FSIS inspection over the years. We've done a lot. I have done a lot in helping federal agencies understand this industry and kind of the impacts that either their regulations or even their support, how they could direct that support to help us out going forward. It is a cost associated with those regulations. One of the other things the industry is kind of looking at right now is kind of this sustainability certification. Lots of different logos out there. It causes a problem to our processors. Which ones do I put on those, on those boxes? Which ones do I put on those bags? The industry is really interested in going to this USDA PVP program, but we've got to get that kind of approved through the Global Sustainable Seafood Initiative. So lots of work going on there, which will probably delay that being adopted further than what it is right now. So in conclusion, we have been able to have a large impact through research, diagnosis, and extension. Well, one thing about this industry, catfish industry, we see very little private sector research and development investment. All of that is funded either through the federal government or state government. There really are no consulting services that you see out there. So they rely on our research and extension community to kind of help them out, this kind of stuff. Unfortunately, I see these kind of issues kind of leading to a continued loss of acreage. I don't know how far that's going to go, but I am a little bit cautious about where we are going forward in this acreage and production side of that. So with that, I took this picture in Louisiana back in the 80s. Mr. Insminger was a good friend of mine, and I don't know whether these issues that he has are in the order ranked here, but sick catfish certainly was at the top of his list back in probably 1987. And I hope the youngins are all doing well. Questions that anybody might have.
Awesome. Thanks, Jimmy. That was a really fascinating presentation. And Yeah, I just want to also shout out Jimmy because he's on the AIE advisory committee along with Forrest and Anita, who are also on the call. Um, So yeah, we really appreciate them giving guidance to the website. As we get into Q&A, I just want to drop a few things in the chat. One is we are on YouTube, and that's where we upload these presentations, usually the same week that we have them. So if you wanted to share this presentation with other people, it'll go up on there. And we also post it on the Aquaculture Information Exchange as well. Um, because we're a little short on time, if we can't get to everybody's questions, one of the great things about our website is you can ask questions directly on there, and Jimmy will be able to respond to them that way. If you do think of questions, so I'll drop the link to the Connect and Learn group as well. And then finally, we just have an exit survey. So while we're doing the Q&A, if y'all want to take that, it's just a few questions, but it helps us improve these presentations. And so, yeah, if people have questions, you can either raise your hand or you can write them in the chat and I can read them to Jimmy, however you want to do it.
See, one question that Forrest mentioned that I may want to define what PGD is. That's proliferative gill disease. It's a problem, and it's one that we have been looking at. When I was here doing fish health work as a research associate back in the um, early to mid 80s, we were looking at that even back then.
What other questions do people have? Don't be shy. All right, Jamie says, wondering how long does it take for the fish to get to the market size and if you grade them during that time?
Well, typically a hybrid, he will that fish will probably be somewhere around uh, 8 inches long in about 10 months. And we can get in that next production cycle, we can get that animal to um, that premium size. So you're looking at from hatch until market, we have reduced that either through hybrids or even through the Delta Select lines from USDA. We can get that animal to market roughly in 18 to 24 months. And what we're seeing now, if that animal is still swimming around beyond 24 months, there's a good chance that it's going to get a little bit outside of our um, primary market size.
And that's sort of what you were referencing with the delay for harvest.
Correct. So let's say that, if that animal gets, if you're taking the samples in and you're saying, hey, most of these fish are ready to go, um, and they say, well, I can't get to you for another 2 months, or you've got a delay in off flavor. You've got an animal there that you're going to continue to probably feed something to maintain, the weight that you've got on. But if you're going to continue to kind of push that animal at all, then, we're going to be converting that feed into flesh, and that may come back to haunt us. And I say that, a 2 month, when we've seen farmers that have been delayed as long as 6 months trying to get fish, and it's not a product that we can go stick in a silo somewhere, harvest it and put it away, until somebody's ready to take it. We've got to maintain that animal for some period of time.
Right. And Jamie had a follow-up question, which is how do you deal with off flavor?
We're still doing. We typically will have to have 3 samples accepted by a processor before we even get on scheduled. So we'll take something in, we'll take a set of fish in from that pond. It'll be checked by a flavor checker. Okay. And if it passes at that time, then we are put on some schedule. And then either maybe a week before, we'll have to bring in another sample. And if it passes at that time, then we remain on the schedule. And then it's flavor sample is taken when those fish arrive at the plant. And if they're off, they get sent back. Okay. So, what we're trying to do, I mean, the primary is algal control. So if we see that we've got a pond that has been identified as off flavor, then we're typically either using either a copper sulfate treatment or else a diuron treatment to try to get those fish back on flavor.
Got it. And Ethan had a question, which is referencing the large drop in the imports the last year of the survey, and he was asking if this was due to the continued effects of COVID or increased tariffs or trade scrutiny, and whether or not you think this trend will continue.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know whether that is a production side. I really think that's some production issue there in the original country. Okay, so it's either going to be either they are not producing as much, or they have found alternative markets so they're shipping it to the EU rather than to us, or they're shipping it, to neighboring countries because it's cheaper. They don't have to put it on that boat to get it over here. Okay, so either they found some alternatives. So I don't know. I have not followed this year's imports close enough to know where that trend is. Okay, my guess is that's typically a blip on the radar. Is that strong dollar? They're going to want to come back. Okay, so I don't know that. I certainly don't know that it's a regulatory impact or anything else. I think it's just some marketing issues with our production issues within the country.
And Sarah's question is actually related to that, which is just if there is any effort for stricter regulations on imports to increase the competitiveness of raised fish at the grocery store, U.S. raised fish.
One thing that I am hearing is that there is industry is really asking USDA because one of the things with inspection is that we would like to see more in-country inspection to see whether there is true equivalency between the two systems, between what our processors have to go through in this country and what you would be seeing if you visited a processing plant in Vietnam or China. So now that, for a long time, a lot of those on ground inspections were delayed primarily due to COVID. From what I had heard, they could, either couldn't get into country or couldn't get out of country, these kind of things. So now I think there's that question is being asked is can we get more of an in-country inspection to test this level of equivalency?
Perfect. And yeah, I think we have time for maybe one more question. These have been really great questions so far. Or I know Anita and Luke, you got shout outs during the presentation if you wanted to add anything. Ganesh says Vietnam is trying to reduce the existing anti-dumping tariff levels, just for some additional context. Thanks, Ganesh. Anybody else? Oh, go ahead, Jimmy.
Our other cooperators, when we talk about fish health management, certainly we rely a lot on our counterparts at Auburn and on the economic side, our counterparts at Virginia Tech as well. So I think we have a good research group, collaborative effort out there, and I think the catfish industry has really benefited from it. And I think a lot of that, when we go back, because you're not having that outside R&D. Okay, so it is all university and governmental kind of development out there, and so it's more than any one location can do. So thanks for that.
All right. Well, yeah, it looks like a lot of people saying thanks and great presentation. So I guess we'll take that as a cue to wrap things up. But yeah, Jimmy is nominated for one of our AIE awards. So if you want to vote for him starting tomorrow, I'm sure he'd appreciate the vote. Other than that, thanks again, Jimmy, and have a good rest of your week, everybody.
Thank y'all.